Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the Richmond City Council meeting of Monday, February 14th, 2022 to order. May I have a motion on the minutes? Moved and seconded. Any discussion on that? We'll call the question then. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Madam Clerk, agenda additions and deletions?
We have one agenda correction, Your Worship. It's on page CNCL 6, and this is for item 12, the Health, Social, and Safety Grants Report. And the motion that's on the agenda should read as follows. Recommendation 1, that the 2022 Health, Social, and Safety Grants be awarded for the total recommended amount as identified in Attachment 1 of the report titled 2022 Health, Social, and Safety Grants, dated December 14th, 2021, from Director of Community Social Development, for a total of $630,975. That includes the following additions. A, Multicultural Helping House Society to receive $5,000. Parish of St. Albans grant increased by $6,348 for the purchase of a new commercial refrigerator. Item C, Canadian Mental Health Association grant increased by $1,130. Item D, Community Mental Wellness Association of Canada grant increased by $1,565. Item E, Richmond Mental Health Consumer and Friends Society grant increased by $1,022. Item F, the Kahila Society of Richmond grant increased by $1,931. Item G, Big Sisters of BC Lower Mainland grant increased by $1,500. Item H, Richmond Women's Resource Center grant increased by $2,402. And recommendation 2, that the grant funds be dispersed accordingly.
All right, may I have a motion on the agenda with that addition? That's moved and seconded. Just by way of an explanation, at the General Purposes Committee, the health grants, there were a number of health grants that were, the recommended amount was approved, but there were additions to that, and that's what this amended motion reflects. So all those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. We have one presentation tonight from the Gateway Theatre. We'll welcome Camilla Tibbs, the Executive Director, and Diane Purvey, the Chair of the Board. Ladies.
Hi, thank you very much. Mayor, City Council, and respected guests, my name is Diane Purvey, and I am the Chair of the Board of Directors of the Gateway Theatre Society. With me are Executive Director Camilla Tibbs and Director of Artistic Programs, Barbara Tomasik. I'd like to take a moment to thank my colleagues on the board for all their work and recognize those who are outgoing, specifically Vinia Johnston and Helena Zhu. I'd also like to acknowledge the work of all of the Gateway staff and our volunteers during another pandemic year of uncertainty and adaptation. The unwavering support of the City of Richmond has been essential to Gateway throughout the pandemic. Thank you for your commitment to Gateway and to arts and culture programs in Richmond. I will now pass things over to Camilla so she can tell you what Gateway has been doing.
Thank you, Diane. I'm happy to be here to tell you a bit about what we've been up to at Gateway over the past year. Thanks in particular to the sustaining support of the city and other government funders, we've been able to undertake a number of innovative projects in 2021. Our academy classes have continued to run throughout the pandemic. They're all now back in person in our studio. Enrollment is limited to ensure physical distancing, so we've only been able to accommodate about half the number of students we might otherwise have had. Feedback from parents and guardians continues to tell us how important these classes and the outlet for creative expression is for the youth. We began our year with a series of online offerings for audiences of all ages. In the Transformations Project, Taiwanese-Canadian artist Johnny Wu explored the idea of filial piety in a video essay. Our Chinese shadow puppetry workshops, offered as part of the Children's Arts Festival, were also made available to adult artists. And in our Mad Practice workshop, artist J.D. Derbyshire explored mental well-being during this difficult time. In the early summer, in collaboration with Public Art and artist Carmen Chen, the beautiful mural Stages of Bloom was created for our Gilbert Road wall, reflecting the dreams and experiences of Academy students, staff, volunteers, and artists at Gateway, and painted in part by volunteers and neighbors. In July and August, we finally welcomed audiences back in person, albeit to the Gateway Grove on the lawn outside the theatre. Thanks to the support of park staff at the city, we hosted 2 outdoor concerts, much to the delight of audiences. Our Songs of Summer concerts featured local theatre artists and musicians Amanda Sum, Jason Sakaki, and Tiana Jung. You may recall that in 2020, we created a miniature paper theatre kit, which families took home and assembled. This year, we assembled a full-size version of the design and took it out to the community. At the Gulf of Georgia Cannery and Aberdeen Mall, more than 560 Richmond kids and families were able to play on our stage. In the fall, we were also able to hold 3 sessions of play readings for English learner classes at Success Immigrant Service Society, using play scripts as an innovative way for new English speakers to practice their reading and comprehension in a fun environment. And then at the end of our year, for our holiday production, Barbara Tomasic and Christopher King put together a fun holiday concert of Broadway songs performed by 7 talented singer-musicians. We hosted audiences at 50% capacity, plus we filmed a version of the show for people to watch on demand at home. Sales were somewhat limited, but it is thanks to the support of the city that we were able to proceed with live performance despite the pandemic. We were one of the few shows locally that did not have to close early due to COVID exposures or to changes of audience capacity permitted. Because we established we were staying at 50%, even when the capacity numbers fluctuated on the public health order, we were able to maintain our performances. We deliberately took a conservative approach to ensure the safety of performers, the staff, and the public. So coming up in the next few months, this week we have our Lunar New Year Lantern Experience this weekend. And then in March and April, we have the plays Certified and In Wonderland. Both of the productions will be kept at 50% capacity in order to safeguard audiences, even though we expect capacity restrictions may be ended soon. We're also working to find ways that rental events can happen in May and June, despite the current and ongoing COVID restrictions. I'd like to finish by touching on a couple of practical matters. Firstly, our financial position. We finished our last fiscal year with a surplus despite the pandemic. This year, however, due to the relaunching of in-person shows with social distancing constraints and the uncertainty about our rental events, we are anticipating a deficit. It does seem likely, though, that it will be comparable or less than the surplus achieved last year, thereby keeping us on an even footing overall. Secondly, the city owns almost all of the specialist theatrical equipment in the venue. We were grateful to have the theatrical lighting equipment upgraded in 2019, and now we're looking at the needs of our audiovisual equipment, much of which is original to the building and failing regularly. I'm hoping to come back to speak to you in more detail about potential solutions later this year. And finally, on behalf of everyone at Gateway, including our audiences, thank you for your support.
All right, thank you very much. We have a question from Councillor Au.
Yes, my question is, can you tell us a little bit more about the financial situation last year? Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, I think we had a surplus of about 5% of our operating budget, so it was in the region of $140,000.
Okay, good. Yeah, and I have to say that I'm really appreciative of the events being offered by Gateway Theatre last year, and especially the Christmas time, the Broadway holiday. I was one of the 1,215 attendees in person for the show. I think it's amazingly good. Now, and I have another question about the September last year with the artist Carmen Chan. I think Gateway had a mural on the wall facing Gilbert Road. So far, what kind of feedback have you received from the public?
Oh, I'm not sure that I have heard anything directly myself, I'm afraid. Sorry, I don't have any particular comments.
Okay, good, thank you. Yeah, but I really like it, just to tell you that I like the...
We're thrilled with it.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is in regards to the songs of the summer events that were held outside, and I imagine that was a bit of a kind of a surprise venue change for yourself. But you did thank the park staff. Could you speak a little bit to what was required to make that venue suitable? And in addition to that, I know the Minaroo Lakes renewal plan is in full swing for consultation and design next. Is there look into having any outdoor space enhanced as the Minaroo Lakes project goes forward?
I'm not aware of anything enhanced for our benefit in the plan. If it's okay, Your Worship, may I ask Barbara Tomasic to respond about the work with the Park Department?
Yes, of course. Barbara?
Hi. Thank you. We had a really great experience working with parks. We went through the REACT application program, so which required us to work with just what was needed for us to use the front lawn. So for us, we kept this a very simple event in the sense we didn't do catering or food or anything like that. So we worked with the city around power restrictions, parking, things like that, just to make sure, and sound restrictions, so we weren't disturbing the neighborhood. And they were really helpful around those sorts of things, just to make sure that the flow of the area was working, that everything was safe, and that we were working within the restrictions and the requirements of the city, because this was a new venue for us. So it was a really excellent experience. We found we had wonderful partners, and I think we were able to work with the city around some power as well, as this was a new experience for us for doing an outdoor event. So instead of running cables from our building, we were able to partner and use generators and things like that, which worked really well. So we're hoping that is a partnership that can continue into the future.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the update.
Okay, so thank you, Camilla, Diane, and Barbara, for your presentation. It really is a good example of how creative you can be and keep going, even though it certainly wasn't like that last year and won't be like that the next year. So, and I reflect the comments of Councillor Howe. I particularly enjoyed the Christmas Broadway musical. I just thought that was really, really well done, and just very enjoyable. So thanks to all of you. Carry on, and we'll look forward to working with you as we go along.
Thank you very much.
All right, may I have a motion to resolve in the committee of the whole to hear delegations on items on the agenda? Moved and seconded. All those in favor, opposed, carried. We have two delegations, I am told. First of all, on the Steveston waterfront matter, we have Brian Veljasic. Are you there, Brian? There you are. Turn on your video and your audio, and you've got 5 minutes.
Okay, you did pretty good, Veljasic. That was close. It's regarding the public access on the Steveston waterfront. Hello, councilor members. I'm Brian Veljasic of 12231 First Avenue, the Ways building in Steveston Village. I live right across the street from the former Esso site that was across the street. I presently have an application with the city to add one residential unit on the leasehold property of 3900 Bayview Street. I've owned the Riversong Inn property for 12 years now. The Riversong property currently is zoned CS2, mixed residential use. This has been the case for over 30 years and is one of the reasons that I purchased the lease. I understand and completely agree with the referral regarding public access to the waterfront. The waterfront access is critical to the future of Stevenson. This makes Stevenson a special place with the waterfront connection. However, my property already provides 2 access links to the waterfront. The single housing does not restrict public access at all. I would like to ask that my application be allowed to proceed, since I'm not asking to rezone, but merely make a text amendment to the existing zoning to allow a single residential unit rather than 2 or more units, as is presently permitted under the current zoning. This application for a second-level single residential unit in the community that I have lived and have worked as a commercial fisherman my whole life. I want to live out the rest of my days looking out on the harbor, and that has been part of my life. The river was a way for my wife and I to achieve our dream. I would ask that you allow my application to proceed so that I can fulfill. And thank you for your consideration.
All right, thank you. The next delegation is Sharon McGugan to speak on the trees.
Okay, everyone hear me all right?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So thank you very much for this opportunity to speak. The Garden City Conservation strongly supports all the proposed amendments to the tree protection bylaw. Loss of biodiversity is one of the greatest problems we face worldwide. Significant trees are an important part of biodiversity, and it's a huge loss when these big trees go down. Keeping a tree, you know, we'd all love to see that happen, but it's not always possible. We understand. The recommendation to create a significant trees canopy print, including having one larger tree, is really brilliant. A lot of thought and sincere desire to work harder at giving back, ecologically speaking, is reflected in this and other proposed amendment changes. Mitigating ecological loss in our neighborhoods is not easy, but it is worthwhile. We are a better community when we consider the natural world in our plans. Richmond is a special place for birds. We're on the Pacific Flyway. We live on the Fraser Estuary. We have a responsibility to protect and preserve and restore biodiversity, of which significant trees are a key element now into the future. Extinctions are already happening, and it's taking place right in our backyards. Common birds that we grew up seeing lose their homes or their nesting opportunities and food sources every day. Birds cannot survive without a biodiverse habitat that includes significant trees and shrubs and other lower growth that exist around them. Biodiversity. We're very happy to note the mention of protecting or relocating shrubs as well as trees in the amendment. Lower growth is an essential element for birds and other wildlife. It's almost always removed without a thought, and the fact that shrubs are giving acknowledgement of importance is heartening. In conclusion, I'd like to read one phrase that's in the staff report that we love. This, wherever possible, plant new landscaping that will be beneficial to native and migratory birds. This kind of language gives us hope. Whatever actions we take to mitigate ecological loss is a positive and shining legacy for our city. Thank you to everyone who has had and will have a part in these excellent, well thought out recommendations. It is our hope that Mayor and Council will fully support these amendments that give stronger protections for our significant trees.
All right, thank you. May I have a motion to rise and report? Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. That brings us to the consent agenda. Where we have the receipt of the committee minutes, the application by the city for a heritage alteration permit at London Farm, Community Energy and Emissions Plan 2050. Then we have the grants for the parks, recreation, and community events, for arts and culture, for childcare, health, social, and safety. Then there's the item for cessation of cash transactions at City Hall, the land use applications for first reading, which go to public hearing March 21st. There's just one of those, which is Unit 140, 11300, number 5 Road, the temporary commercial use permit. The enhanced protections for significant trees, the BC Housing Safer program, and the referral response on public access along the Steveston waterfront and proposed amendments to the Steveston area plan. May I have a motion to adopt those by general consent? So that's moved and seconded. We'll start off with Councillor McNulty.
Thank you, Worship. Just a couple matters. I'll be supporting everything on there. Actually, it's a very powerful agenda tonight with a lot of good things on it, and I just want to highlight a few and make a few comments. The first one is the London Farm, the heritage alteration permits. Very, very important that we continue to invest in heritage. The London Farm and the Londons and the piece of property in front of it was one of the first pieces of land that was toiled in 1861 to 1864 as of one of the first farms, and actually was toiled the same time McRoberts moved here, and I think it's significant the fact that we're continuing to endorse that plan on Dyke Road. I would pay special tribute, Your Worship, to the Community Energy and Emissions Plan. I didn't say too much of the committee, but I want to thank staff for it. It's just an absolutely fantastic document, and I've read it 3 times now, and not because I'm a slow reader. It's just the fact that there are 75 pages of material. What I'd say to staff, thank you very, very much. You did a fantastic job on it. I think the rest of the Lower Mainland could benefit by it. When I look at the community input and what was done on it, and we have 77 primary actions and 199 related implementation steps that we're going to set our path to achieve our 50% reduction in emissions to net zero by 2050, and I believe we'll probably achieve it beforehand. And I look at it this way, Your Worship, with the strategic directions, and I hope this report gets into the hand of the public, because this is the public's report. There's so much in there that the public can do as well in complementing the city and working together to make that goal realistic and achieve. So I really, it's simple reading. I thank staff for it. It's appreciated to identify the partners and how we're going to get there and our pathways. I can, like I said at committee, I could speak all day on it, and I think others may want to speak on it, but everything was impressive when I look at almost 1,000 people participating in this particular report and getting that information. Like I said, to staff, it's kudos all around. Your Worship, I did want to make a comment on grants. It's interesting in really tough times, and I believe we're in tough times, when the clerk read the increases, et cetera, in the committee and made the recommendation. We're almost giving $1 million in grants.
Over $1 million.
Okay.
It's over $1 million.
Is it over $1 million now? Okay, I guess with the extra 20,000, it's over $1 million in grants. I don't know too many cities throughout the province that are given $1 million. 71 bodies that are getting grants, sports, arts and culture, childcare, very important to us, and the health and social services grants. Really what I would call a super good news story. And again, thank you for staff for the adjudication of them. And I'm very happy that we can, I can support and vote for giving money back. The other one, report, and I think it behoves us to look at it. We had a delegation tonight on trees, and we had a delegation at Planning Committee on significant trees, and I appreciate Mr. McGugan coming forward. And yes, I did go to Heather Street and look at the trees there, and I do want to make a comment a bit later. But I want to again thank staff for a outstanding report, Mr. Cooper, Mr. Jaggs, and departments, et cetera, and all those others that were in it from the Parks Department, to put these forward. They are significant in terms of they're clear and concise, and they protect the existing canopy. And actually, when I look at them, the recommendations are to increase the canopy of Richmond. And I think with these significant recommendations, we will. As I mentioned, a committee, Councillor Steves, yourself, and myself, and back in 2006 when the bylaw went through 5-4, and we've come a long ways in protecting trees and canopies and on it. So I'm very happy to support that. I just had a quick question. In the replacement of trees, and I don't know if staff are available here to it, we talk about trees and removal of trees and planting in the same location and a significant tree. What about fruit trees, and how are they treated? Because you don't plant an apple tree in the same place. It won't grow, okay? You don't plant certain other species in the same place. You moving 20 feet to the left or the right or whatever. But I'm wondering, are fruit trees the same if you remove an apple tree, you have to plant 2 apple trees?
Mr. Cooper.
Yes, yes, Your Worship. Our resident arboricultural expert is here. I'll refer that to Mr. Jaggs.
Okay, thank you.
Your Worship, to Councillor McNulty, fruit trees wouldn't really fall into this because they don't typically get to 36-inch diameter, so they would be treated much like other protected trees under the bylaw. If one needs to be replaced, then you're either replacing it with one other new tree for a residential homeowner, or a 2-to-1 replacement if you're on a development site.
Thank you very much for that. Because with the water table, especially on the west side, a lot of trees get rot after 6-7 years inside. And the core tree, a small apple tree or a fairly large apple tree would have to be replaced after a while. And the other thing that came out, Your Worship, and we didn't deal with it, but maybe staff can take it under advisement. I looked at the issue of ivy on trees came up, and I went over to Heather Street, and that whole subdivision has ivy on almost every major tree over there, and it's choking everything along over by Pollock Park and north of Pollock Park, over to from Garden City to Fore Road. And I think it's something we need to look at, and it's something hopefully will be put on future agendas, and how to deal with ivy wrapping itself around trees and going up 40 feet. And I thank the delegation for passing that on. Right. And the last item, Your Worship, I want to support is the SAFER project. And I'm a little concerned with the resolution. When you read it, what people are getting and what the subsidy is, it really doesn't fit 2022, in my opinion. I think I'm not sure if we can put a stronger resolution forward, or staff would come forward when we looked at trying to increase housing. But the payment is $265 a month, which is not bad. But the standard for that is very limited. And I think in our letter to the provincial government, the minister responsible for housing, I think we have to be very, very strong in what we're saying with regard to that. And at that end of the housing spectrum, even with what they're suggesting, in my opinion, it's not enough. And if we could even make a suggestion for a higher amount, which is livable and reasonable and achievable for people. So with that, Your Worship, I'll be supporting everything on the agenda. Thank you very much.
Okay, and I interjected when you said almost $1 million. In fact, I've done the arithmetic now, and it is not over $1 million, but it is approaching. Yeah, it's. I'm hearing all these different numbers, but it's in the range of 930, 920. Close to $1 million, and darn good in my opinion. Councillor McPhail.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will be supporting all the items on the consent agenda, and we'll just speak to a couple. Number 8, the Community Energy and Emissions Plan 2050. This report seeks Council's endorsement of Richmond's Community Energy and Emissions Plan, CEEP 2050. The plan is guided by 8 strategic directions and includes 77 primary actions and 199 related implementation steps that will set Richmond on a path to achieve 50% reduction in community GHG emissions by 2030 and reach net zero emissions by 2050. Richmond now has over a decade of leadership in implementing climate action at the local level, and as mentioned in the report, achieved a couple of North American firsts for some of our initiatives. And while that is really great for me, this really is about our continued commitment to build upon actions identified in the previous CEEP 2014, as well as current federal and provincial measures to address climate change. We depend on funding and support from other levels of government, so I'm glad to see this document will be shared with our local MLAs and MPs, as well as the federal and provincial ministers. I really appreciate the work that has gone into advancing equity through plan action. Mitigation actions have been identified as good opportunities to advance equity, fairness, wellness, and inclusion. Thank you to staff for all your work on this fantastic document. And I just want to speak to all the grants kind of in general. The 2022 Parks, Recreation, and Community Events Grants, Arts and Culture Grants Program, Child Care Grants, and Health, Social, and Safety Grants. All the grant programs contribute significantly to the quality of life in Richmond by supporting community organizations whose initiatives and activities support essential components of a livable community. As we heard, the total funds available through the grant programs is about $930,000. There were over 70 grant applications this year with requests totaling over $1.3 million. COVID-19 has affected many facets of our community, and for many organizations, their ability to raise funds has been impacted. I'm glad that we've been able to top up some of the health, social, and safety grants, especially for those nonprofits who provide services in the area of mental health and wellness and food programs. We know there are many wants and needs in our community, and the detailed information we receive through the grant application process helps us to better understand the diversity of those needs. I find this information very helpful and helps me to better understand the community as we carry out our advocacy work. Thank you to staff for the great job you did in liaising with the applicants and for adjudicating the applications in the various grant streams. I'm sure it's a difficult job when there are so many worthwhile applications and projects. Thank you. And that's it, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, and through the chair. I too will be supporting all the items on the consent agenda. I just want to talk to a few of them, and I have a couple questions. I'll start with London Farm and the master plan. I just want to acknowledge how much the society, being the liaison there, but also from meetings before I was on council, how much the society appreciates all the work done by city staff in helping them through this process. I know they're very enthusiastic about the master plan, and a couple items in particular, the 1920s tractor and the relocation of that is really exciting. Even something like the gravel pathways, people might not realize what a big deal that is to the site and the society because it allows you better access and less damage to the grounds and that type of thing. Also, the chicken coop and the beehives are extremely popular. And so it's a very good plan. Thanks to staff for working so well with the society. I know that the society is, for a fact, I know the society is very, very happy with the efforts of staff when it comes to the master plan there. So thank you. The Community Energy and Emissions Plan 2020, again, thank you to staff for this report because, as you've heard, it's extremely thorough, it's very forward-leaning, and the recommendations are the 8 strategic directions and related actions and steps are all very practical. I think some of them are hard to achieve, but I think your reach should always exceed your grasp, so that's very good. And if it wasn't difficult, it might not be as worthwhile trying to achieve. Just a couple comments and a couple questions on this one. Climate change is a clear and present danger, not just to Richmond, but to the entire world. So this report is timely, and it is an urgent matter that we deal with. There is no plan B when it comes to climate change because there is no planet B. We have to get it right with this planet. So with this report, I've mentioned it before, worldwide, we generate 51 billion tons of greenhouse gases into our atmosphere. And just so people in the public can kind of envision what that's like, if you think of the Earth and you think of a typical globe and you wonder how big the atmosphere is, how thick it is, it's about the thickness of a dime if you put that around the globe. Or in another way, if you thought of an apple, it would be about the thickness of the apple skin around the apple. So that's the atmosphere, and we're doing 51 billion tons every year. So we have to get to zero, or net zero, and that is a challenge, and that's why this plan is an excellent start. But one of the questions you might hear is that from a city point of view, some people might wonder if this is more an international treaty issue or if it's a national issue for countries or a state issue or a provincial issue. And I just want to mention that cities do play a very important role in fighting climate change. And our plan is an important example of that. So there's lobbying of different levels of government and industry. There's density and housing issues and mobility and transportation. Those kind of things are all within a city purview. So a question I have for staff is, can you provide a tangible example, not just from Richmond, but from other cities as well, or initiative that we may have heard of? There is a group called the C40 Mayors. Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver are part of that. So is Shanghai and London and other big cities. So it'd be interesting to maybe hear an example, because that way people can really relate to how important it is that cities get on board with this planning. So do you have something that you could comment on in that regard?
Yes, through your worship to Councillor Hobbs. I'd say in 2014, cities saw themselves absent ultimately from the global discussion, mainly because state governments were leading that. But leading up to the Paris meeting on climate change, a number of cities grouped together and created entities like the Compact of Mayors and other agencies to represent the voice of cities internationally. And since then, cities are more integrated into those global discussions. And, our city is represented well through BC government.
Your Worship, if I could, I would just add through you to Councillor Hobbs as well. I think we have many examples where Richmond and Richmond City Council have demonstrated themselves as leaders, independent of any broader coordination or exercises among cities nationally or globally. If you look at things like the moves we've done on plastic bans or EV charging stations and multifamily, these are situations where Richmond has moved ahead independently with policy and regulation, and we've seen that grow with other municipalities picking up, and ultimately the province and the federal government establishing new policies and regulations in those areas. So certainly a combination of engagement across a number of vehicles and concerted action, as it demonstrated, yields a lot of fruit, not just for us, but by leading by example, a lot of others can follow and provide those benefits.
Sure, thanks for that. Yeah, I think cities indeed have a collective clout, to be sure. Just a couple other questions. With the 8 strategies, I just thought they were excellent. I mean, they're measurable in a lot of cases. There's good metrics. Like I said, they can be challenging, but they're achievable. So the other thing I like about them is the interconnective kind of nature of them. And in particular, I'll just pick out the carbon neutral buildings, the complete communities, the active mobility, the transit issue, and the green infrastructure. And so I'm very optimistic about the community plan, the city center community plan in particular, because I think it all relates to densification and some of the projects that we see come forward. And I think that helps us promote those strategies. So can staff comment, perhaps even quantify, or at least qualify, some of the positive impact from a green point of view, from reducing greenhouse gases, that some of our new developments will have? Because I think it also links into reducing greenhouse gases through the district energy plants, for instance, at the Oval. And those aren't completely built out yet, so I guess I'm asking you to guess a little bit. But when you see those being completely built out, what is it in a tangible way, the potential for reduction of greenhouse gases for our city when you combine densification and the different strategies I mentioned, along with the low carbon energy districts? Is that too much to ask?
Through your worship to Councillor Hawes, yes, there is a lot of interaction between the different strategies, in particular complete communities. I do have some stats available. Transit ridership is up 60% because between 2006 and 2016. So that's something we've achieved already. Similarly, bike trips are up 25% in city centre, and walking trips are up by a third. So these are measured results that we've already seen. Looking forward, by 2050, we anticipate, as a result of implementation of the plan with respect to buildings, to see at least a 75% reduction in overall emissions from buildings. In city centre, absolutely, predominantly that will be due to investments in district energy as well as step code policy implementation.
Yeah, thanks. I just think it's important to link those things. And just a couple quick comments. Lastly, I just noted the positive comments, and you mentioned it too, the economic impact for renovations, for instance, and different innovations and retrofitting. That has a significant economic impact. And one of the most impressive results I just want to quickly mention was on, I think, page 247 with the Food Recovery Network program. That exceeded all its goals significantly. That was impressive. And I just wanted to mention one thing I read somewhere else. If people think about it, 1/5 of all the carbon dioxide that we emit today, 1/5, 20%, will still be in the atmosphere in 10,000 years. That's beyond my lifetime. So I do want to just thank everybody for a really thoughtful and innovative report with practical, I think, and achievable solutions in the plan. And Your Worship, just a couple other topics, and I'll be shorter.
We're kind of
okay. I just want to mention the
past.
Okay, just the enhanced tree bylaw. I thought that was a very thorough report and very good, and I think it does a good job of balancing out the different problems we have with significant trees in terms of deterring people from acting unlawfully. And I think staff explained very well at committee how that bylaw will be enforced, and it'll be done so in a practical, fair way. And the public access to the waterfront is the last one. And I just wanted to say that that report, I think, does a good job of laying out the plan in a very complex situation with a lot of overlapping jurisdictions. It's not easy, but I do agree with the goal of increasing public access to the waterfront and support that recommendation as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will be supporting everything on the consent agenda, and I'll speak to about 5 of the items in my time here. First off, number 6, the receipt of committee minutes. In there was a couple items that were added to the Parks and Rec Committee meeting that a number of members of the public are really excited about hearing the response to. So I'll just mention again that skating on frozen ponds in our parks or playing pond hockey, staff are looking into how we can work with the public to encourage more of those great days on the ice. Another one is around auxiliary staff and recognition for retirement after putting it.
That item should be enclosed.
Okay, it was in the open meeting. So
yeah, it shouldn't have been.
It was in the minutes. Okay, thank you. Number 7, which is the application for London Farms, just to follow with the council's lead last council meeting approving the application for the B City certification. Part of this, or a number of the exterior enhancements, part of this project will go towards that, and bee-friendly planting and biodiversity enhancements and the like. Number 8, community energy and emissions plan. A couple things on this one. So where to start? I think I'll just pick on one of the strategic directions, the one I brought up at general purposes meeting, the one called enhanced green infrastructure. More details about it in a few different places in the report, including page 114, 115. There it does mention that this was the second highest, almost the highest, of importance for all the survey responders, and the staff went out to many countless events, went into school classrooms, connecting with the youth, and people understanding, as we have an item coming up later on trees, people really value the green components of our city. I don't think calling it infrastructure is the way to go, but I don't want to work on wordsmithing tonight, so I'm not sending it back for referral or anything like that. But I do want to acknowledge that there's many aspects of this that I don't think we're working towards the maybe the approach that could actually get us the best results. Looking on page 67, that's the one that shows the big graph and how all 8 of these strategic directions are intertwined. And you see that lower down at the bottom, way pushed in the future, we would get the carbon sequestration points for all the green infrastructure we've predicted. But I think this needs to be put on the priority list now. We already have a number of strategic plans within the city, including this one here on our ecological network management strategy, which includes doing that on all different types of lands. And if we were to have that help to address some of the decisions we make, I think we'd go much further to actually protect lands. Some of the ones that are not included or mentioned in this, well, actually, I'll come back to that in the tree part. But just the fact that we've adopted the Farming First strategy and seeing the trend of us approving ALR exemption applications, which are digging up or bearing the peat, which in this report are saying we're adding to the carbon sequestration every year, but that's not if we're dealing with dying peatland. So anyhow, just not seeing that as the priority, I think that would give us the best results over the long term, rather than just taking what we have at the year 2050 and putting it in to complete our goal. Anyhow, moving on, running out of time here. So the last 2 items, I'll just say briefly, number 17, I would like staff to comment on the delegation and the ability to have that development still be brought forward. Is that the intention? I know staff didn't comment at the time to the delegate, but I didn't have a question for the delegate. And then my final item here before my time's up, number 15, the enhanced protections for significant trees. I was close to coming tonight to not approve the consent agenda and have that one removed. But hearing Delegate Sharon McGugan and the Garden City Conservation Society supporting it, I see the benefit in supporting it now. We do get some wins out of it, and there are people who do malicious things to trees, and we need to stop them. And I think there are parts of this that will go there, but it is missing the true definition of a wildlife tree, which is not just based on its width at breast height. And I think that should be in the definition on page 583. I also think if we're going to include the amendment or article number, the second one on page 576, I mentioned this at planning committee meeting. I'm not on planning, so I couldn't amend it, couldn't refer it back. I'm not asking that we do that now, but there's just so many aspects of this that I hope our tree preservation bylaw staff come back to within an adequate timeline to get more strength put into it. There's nothing that relates to golf courses, Sea Island North conservation lands, the D&D in the eco-waste sandhill crane habitat, the actual removal of English ivy when people commit to doing it, they're not following through. And there's just so many other aspects of this. It's full of exemption loopholes, but anyway, there is some strength to it, so I'll support it tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Steves.
Thank you very much.
I support all the items on the agenda. I will comment on 4 of them. I've got 10 months to retirement, and I look at every one of these as a retirement present, and there's some ones I'm very happy with tonight. First, the London Farm has been stagnated for a long time, and I'm really pleased with the plan that's before us tonight to regenerate the London Farm and the work that staff is doing in improving the collection outdoors and the design of the park. So that's a real goal. Secondly, I'm very pleased with the Community Energy and Emissions Plan 2050. And for whoever replaces me on Metro Vancouver, this is a sore point. We are decades ahead of any city in Metro Vancouver on community energy, on energy, the district energy that we're producing, and this plan is far better than any part of the Metro 250 plan that's before the board right now. And the reason for that is, and I want to make this very clear so that whoever's going to Metro in the future, which I didn't realize this until we started fighting over it over the last few months, is that what happens is that the cities that don't want something done tell staff they don't want these changes, and the changes don't get made because it takes a 100% unanimous vote to pass Metro 2050. So the naysayers win. And what I also found out is that once Metro 2050 passes, it only requires a 50% vote to amend it. So whoever's there after the next election at Metro Vancouver, think about what's wrong with Metro 2050. It doesn't in the least bit compare what we've got before us tonight at Richmond Council. And make the amendments that only require a 50% vote and make some changes in the region. The other cities simply don't want to do what we're doing. We're densifying industry, for example. Burnaby actually has a two-story building being built by Amazon, but they won't even put it in the Metro 2050 plan to even consider it. And some of the other things that are in here, they won't even consider them because one or two naysaying cities, largely Surrey, but one or two of the others, refuse to go along with it. Therefore, the plan won't pass. So I'm really pleased with our plan. I was hoping that what somebody said that the other cities would learn from doing to see what we were doing, and it would influence the other cities, but it doesn't seem to have happened. So basically, we're going to have to fight for it in the future years by making amendments to the 2050 plan and making sure that the Metro plan works as well as ours is working. And when somebody asked earlier, well, what about senior governments? That's the prime example of what's the matter with senior governments. They simply won't take the necessary steps for any meaningful changes to what they're doing to combat climate change. The next one I want to comment on is the boardwalk. I'm pleased to see that we're going ahead. It was our intent to do all these things in the first place, but somewhere along the line, when you're planning things, it doesn't get printed out, and some places end up with the boardwalk and some don't. So this makes it very clear that we want the boardwalks and we want the access. So I'm happy to see that one going ahead. And finally, the tree protection bylaw, and this one is where we're really ahead. Basically, I keep comparing with Surrey. I think it's about 40 years ago when we debated the tree canopy at Terra Nova, and council voted 5-4 to put in residential use, and the council of the day got thrown out. Well, tonight Surrey's voting on it again, and it'll probably be 5-4 again to develop 400 acres of a 600-acre watershed along the Little Campbell River, and with no protection for the tree canopy or anything. And so, again, Metro Vancouver is way behind, and this report is a way ahead. And what's important about this report is that scientifically, it takes 60 years to grow a tree. And if you replace a mature tree, that's for a mature tree, and if you replace one mature tree, it's going to take 6 years before that seedling is producing the same amount of greenhouse gas sequestering as the one that's cut down. If you plant 2 semi-mature trees or even 1/4 mature trees, then it takes 30 years. And so that's what we do when we ask the developers to plant 2 trees instead of 1 and make sure that they've got a good start. for a significant tree, you'd have to plant half a dozen 10 or 12 foot seedlings to replace it. So it's better to fight like hell to make sure it doesn't have to be replaced at all. And that's what this what this does. So I'm hoping that this message will get across to Metro Vancouver too, because as far as I know, we're the only ones that are even looking this far ahead. And certainly, if we're voting for this program tonight, and Surrey is voting to cut down 400 acres of trees tonight, there's quite a difference in the way two cities look at the future, climate change, and our environment. So that's my comments for tonight.
Okay, thank you. Let's see now. We've got Councillor Howe.
Worship, thank you. I will support everything on the consent agenda, but I want to comment on 3 items and raise a few questions. The first one is item 8, Community Energy and Emission Plan 2050. Well, I would describe this action plan, as a really action-oriented proposal. I think we know of many reports or recommendations being made by other people sitting around without any implementation plan. But for this one, I think we have more than 77 primary actions and many other smaller actions as well. Now, I think people sometimes feel that, we have to do something big in order to protect the environment. But sometimes I think we can start small and still achieve good results with very small investment. I think a good example is on CNCL 247, which is the Richmond Food Recovery Network Program. I think we are the second city who initiate this program for recovering food that might be wasted. And from the information provided by staff, I think we well exceeded the target with very limited investment, right? We only put in $25,000, but we achieved good results in every aspect of the program. So we can go a long way with very small actions. However, I also noticed that some actions might be more difficult, but important, like the retrofitting the old buildings for energy conservation. And I hope that we can have the support of the public to move along on this very important initiative. It's difficult, it's hard work, but I think it's also a very important initiative. I'm glad that from the report, we can see that we have lots of positive response from the public. We have almost 800 people participating in the survey, and we received over 1,000 comments. So I think it's important that we can move on with this positive support from the public. And I also want to point out that there will be many more opportunities for public inputs. We have initiated this plan in May 2019, and in the last 2 years, 2.5 years, actually, we have been actively engaged the public. So I would like to see that going on. The next item is item 15 on the significant trees. As being pointed out by the delegate, we are trying to mitigate ecological loss by giving stronger protection for significant trees. And we are doing this for the many generations to come. I don't think we can ever overstate the value of protecting significant trees. And actually, if a significant tree is lost, I think it can hardly replace it by another tree. As staff has pointed out, a significant tree can be planted 60 or 70 years ago. But I think probably it will take only 60 minutes to cut it down. So it takes a long time to let the tree to grow to that size, but to destroy it is very easy. And once it's lost, I think it can never be compensated. I have a question on page 576, the bottom of the page, item 2. Now, we are going to have the authority to compel a property owner to remove a hazardous tree or a standing dead or dying tree. I cannot imagine, how will ever a property owner allow that to happen. But since staff recommend that kind of change, I would like to know, how often did this happen? So how many situations like that that we are aware of?
Through your worship to Councillor Au, the rationale for that point is that if we want if we want to ensure that a significant tree is replaced, we must have the authority to replace it first and to prepare the ground and to replace it in situ. And that's the key to our recommended measures, is that when you're replacing the significant tree with a significant specimen, a very large tree in itself, in the same location, in situ, what you're doing is ensuring that there is no possible development advantage that can be gained from destroying a tree. So the reason for the reasoning for that measure.
How often does this happen? How often does this happen?
Not often, Your Worship. It's happening right now in that large sequoia. We are demanding that tree be removed so that we can replace it. So this is new territory for us, that we are moving in a direction that such trees, when they are wantonly destroyed, will have to be replaced. Right. So, for example, again, and so
the question was how often. Councillor Au, yes. Continue.
Very good. I'm supportive of this initiative, right? That we have the authority to compel a property owner to do that. I'm glad that it is going to be there. My final comment is on item 17 about the waterfront in Stevenston. And again, I am supportive of the whole initiative. My question is, how will this impact the active applications in the area? And we know that one delegate has already raised a question, so I just want to see, what response staff will have on this.
Through your worship to Councillor Au, in terms of the Steveston waterfront and access to the waterfront, the impact on development applications is relatively minor. We have long sought for connections along the waterfront and back up to Bayview. The staff report simply clarifies some of the directions around how that waterfront access is to be provided and where those access points are to be located. The larger impact would be the referral that was passed at Planning Committee asking us to look at prohibiting, residential uses along the south side of Bayview. We do currently have 2 rezoning applications for residential use on the south side of Bayview. The referral that was passed at Planning Committee requires that staff hold those applications in abeyance until such time as that referral is brought back to council for their consideration.
Okay, thank you. Yes, those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Your Worship. I too will be supporting everything on tonight's agenda. A couple of things I'd like to make some comments on. The Community Energy and Emissions Plan. Thank you to staff for such a comprehensive report and plan. And thank you to all the community that weighed in on this. There was pages and pages of community feedback on this, and thanks for staff for compiling it and working with some of the ideas there. In this plan, there are 8 strategic directions, and it goes from retrofitting buildings to building better to working towards a circular economy. And in that, it also talks about transitioning to zero-emission vehicles. And I think we need to keep remembering that bikes and scooters are zero emission and that they're far superior to cars in terms of how much space they need on the roads and to store and to park, and they actually provide some exercise for many people. And so we need to get people out of their cars, and we need to continue to improve the connectivity of bike and multi-purpose paths here in Richmond, while we're still at the same time considering the larger cargo-style bikes, the e-bikes, bikes with chariots and tow bikes on the back. So as we're building and maintaining our bike paths, so making sure we actually have the connectivity to get people around. And I'm also looking forward to the report from staff that should be coming forward at some point about the pilot of the bike park pod that we have on the west entrance of the Minaroo Center for Active Living. So there's a nice, secure, covered bike pod that is storing, that you can go and put your bike in while you go and work out at the Minaroo Center for Active Living or go to the senior center. You can know that your bike is safe and secure. And I think if this is works out to be a good project, we can have them at more locations, especially around our Canada Line stations. I think it'll be a great opportunity. And as we start creating more of these hubs for our transit use, so that people can ride their bike, know that their bike is safe, secure, dry, won't be vandalized, won't be stolen when they come back, so then they can get on other means of transportation and use the transit network. We're also ceasing to accept cash transactions at City Hall. I know I proposed this 2 years ago when we were considering some anti-money laundering policies, and it's got a number of benefits. It reduces COVID risks, it reduces the risk of accepting counterfeit money, and reduces possibility for people to use City Hall as a means of laundering their money. So I think there's a lot of good reasons why we're changing this. And finally, the BC Housing Safer program. We are advocating to the province and BC Housing to increase rent ceilings and also the monthly payment amounts provided by BC Housing Shelter Aid for Elderly Renters program. I think this is a good initiative and a good thing for us to advocate for. It helps to ensure that all the landlords, including the City of Richmond and the not-for-profits that we partner with, who provide the housing, can afford to maintain the buildings and continue to provide affordable housing here in Richmond. So I think that this is an important step, and I support it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brody. I'm going to jump to the back of the agenda to number 17, which is the Steveston waterfront. And I'm really pleased with this report that we are going to be expanding the public area along the waterfront. But I am concerned about a couple of things. As the second liaison to the Steveston Harbour Authority, they are very concerned about any walkways being expanded out into where the docks are. And so if you look at page 623, it's an aerial view of the Bayview area. It shows the current, I think it's the Blue Canoe building, 3866, going out into the harbor. And then the page before, it shows an expanded walkway going actually further out and wider than than the existing. This would limit use of that dock where it says CS2 on the map. So my question to staff is, please explain how you're working with the Steveston Harbour Authority to ensure that the primary purpose, of course, is that it is a harbour, and we're going to protect that.
Through your worship to Councillor Day, so the image on page 622 in the council agenda package is the is currently in the Steveston area plan, indicating possibly a public walkway that would go around the existing building, which is the Blue Canoe building. It does indicate that it could jut out to where the Steveston Harbour Authority does have authority over that area of water. What we're doing is we're proposing to replace that map with something that shows a walkway that would essentially run along the waterfront rather than going around the building. I guess the bottom line is to have a public waterfront walkway is what we're looking for. The report outlines the various jurisdictional issues that we have to overcome and work with to make that waterfront work. So what we're really doing is trying to replace the map that is showing some specifics that we may not be able to achieve and just indicate that we want a waterfront walkway right across the shoreline.
Perfect. Yeah, so I went down and I checked it out just the other day because I was curious about the walkway around the 3866 lot. And it appears as though the restaurant on that lot has just expanded out to the existing railing of the original wharf. And I'm wondering how that could have happened, and is there any information to show us what it used to be, so we could potentially expand the walkway that should have maybe already been maintained, but over the years has been engulfed in the restaurant.
Through your worship to Councillor Day, part of the referral that came up through Planning Committee is asking staff to essentially look into that situation. What I can tell you at this point is we're not aware of a building permit that was issued for that enclosure from a number of years ago. We are looking at some of the original plans that do indicate that there wasn't supposed to be a public walkway. However, there was no legal documentation that was made or no legal right-of-way that was secured, partly because we're dealing with provincial authority over the water. So we will be looking much further into those complex jurisdictional issues as part of the referral.
Excellent. I'm glad you mentioned that. That was what I wanted you to talk about, because if someone was to look at these maps, the way they're drawn, it would seem confusing. You're going to have a walkway going through the middle of a restaurant, but obviously something has gone amiss and we have to get to the bottom of it. So thank you very much for checking into it. And again, moving backwards, the BC Housing Safer program, you know, I was really surprised. I obviously didn't know enough about it, that BC Housing currently has the rent for a one-bedroom apartment at $803 a month, when the actuality is that same apartment actually costs $1,313 a month. So BC Housing and the province are way off on their numbers. So at committee, I asked that we please add the words housing crisis to the letter to the MLAs and to the provincial government, because this is out of whack and we have to fix it, and we have to lobby for something that's much more representative and a better, safer program that is going to give BC Housing shelter aid for elderly renters, in case people don't know what SAFER is. It's a subsidy, and it's based on the rent, and it's based on the income of that person. And right now, it's just grossly unfair and way out of date. So I'm hoping that letter is going to be very strongly worded. And then the significant trees, which is item 15, it was brought up at committee that what if a dead or dying tree has become a habitat? Are you then still going to require that the tree be removed, or can it stay while it's a habitat for birds or whatever's living there?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, the tree, the health of the tree will always be assessed, and if as originally stated, removing a dead tree is for the sole purpose of putting in a live tree that's of significant size under our amendments. So it is our practice always. So if there is a dying tree that was not killed or wantonly destroyed, certainly we would keep on assessing that. We would assessing its health and assessing its structural stability.
Perfect. And when you read it, it sounds like, oh, if they're dying, that's it, they're gone. But what this does is give staff the leeway to do what you need to do in each situation, which is great.
Yes, yes.
And there, because we had a really long discussion in the planning committee on this significant tree issue, we actually made a motion that adds that the word landscape be removed and replaced with mature trees and biodiversity. And we also talked a lot about English ivy, as was mentioned earlier, and how it is actually killing trees. So there's more to come on this. This is just the beginning, and these bylaws are just the starting point. And I had a question about number 13, which is the cessation of staff cash transactions at City Hall. I had a lady who wanted to pay her dog license. She doesn't have a checking account and she doesn't have a computer. What are the options for someone like that who needs to pay a bill but can't access City Hall, can't pay cash? What do they do?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, what they can do is ask a friend to come to City Hall to pay on their behalf, or family members can help them come to City Hall to pay on their behalf, or go online on their behalf.
Or they could get a bank draft of some sort or a money order.
Yeah, she specifically said, I think it was a bit of an issue with the bank, that she couldn't get bank drafts anymore. But anyhow, yeah, and I wonder about money orders from post offices, if we shouldn't also, if a person doesn't, have a bank account, how do they pay a bill? I mean, they could also go and get a money order. And then the last thing I wanted to do is to thank council. I made a motion regarding the 2022 Health, Social, and Safety grants, and I asked that we increase the grant to St. Albans Church by $6,348 so they could buy a new commercial fridge. And this is so they can make more food and serve more food to people that are really in dire straits and really need that service. So I just wanted to say thanks very much to everybody at GP for not just approving this increase, but the other increases that we approved to take care of the people who take care of our community. Thank you so much.
Well, the people at GP was all of council.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, so I'm going to call the question then on the consent agenda. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. That brings us to number 18, Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will be declaring conflict as I'm on the board of Kidsport Richmond. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So the recommendation is for that the grant to Kidsport be awarded and a check dispersed for the sum of $19,000. And secondly, that $5,000 be held back and allocated to sports groups not recognized by Kidsport, and that this be administered by staff, and at the end of the year, any remaining funds be given back to Kidsport. And I would so move. All right, so this is really just to finish off the Parks, Rec, and Community Events grants, where Councillor Liu has a conflict, but the recommended amount, and this is what we did last year, the recommended amount is $24,000, but there are sports not recognized by Kidsport, and we didn't want to cut off the possibility of giving money to the people involved in those sports. So this worked last year, and the idea is that it'll go again this coming year. Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Just on that, agree to what you just said. But the grant to Kidsport is actually $19,000, and the grant to other sports would be $5,000, and the money would be given to Kidsports. It's not necessarily, and we got to give them back to Kidsport. We're not taking it from Kidsport. We have two separate amounts. So Kidsport would benefit if that $5,000 was not used. So.
All right, I'll take it as a friendly unless anyone has an objection.
Should be held back and should be given to Kidsport, not back to Kidsport.
The first line is okay, $5,000 be held back. This is not out of the 19, this is in addition. Right. But on the third line, remaining funds be given to Kidsport. To
Kidsport, yeah.
Okay, so we'll take it as a friendly to take out the word back unless someone's got an objection to that.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing any objections, so that's the way it'll be. Any other comments? Okay, so we'll call the question on that slightly amended motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. So that brings us to public announcements. There are a few of those. First of all, a couple of appointments, or one appointment anyway, that Ken Hamaguchi is a trustee for the Richmond Board of Education, and he's the liaison to the Richmond Child Care Development Advisory Committee for a one-year term to expire at the end of this year, with trustee Heather Larson as the alternate. And then from the Planning and Development Division, there are no DP panel items to be forwarded to the March 2nd DP panel meeting, and therefore that meeting is going to be canceled. Then we have spring registration for spring programs and activities, and that begins tomorrow on Tuesday, February 15th. People can register online for programs that start in late March through June, beginning with aquatics at 8 o'clock p.m., followed by all other programs at 9 p.m. People can also register by telephone 604-276-4300 starting Wednesday, February 16th. So if you want more information, go to our website, richmond.ca/register. Then I'm pleased to say that in partnership with the Chamber of Commerce, I will be presenting my annual address to the community on Thursday, February 17th at 12 noon. Once again, my address will be online, and registration is open to chamber members and the public. This year, I will look back at some of the big issues of 2021 and how the city is creating and maintaining a sustainable community. A live fireside chat with Nancy Small, who is the CEO of Tourism Richmond, will follow my address and provide an opportunity for everyone to ask and answer questions. So if you want to register for that one, go to richmondchamber.ca. Then this coming weekend, on Monday, February 21st, it's Family Day. We encourage everyone to take the time to connect with family and loved ones. The city has over 40 free, low-cost, and safe programs and activities available over the entire weekend. In-person and online options include swimming and skating, open gyms, and sports, crafts, exhibitions, and much, much more. So again, you can go to the city website /Family Day if you want more information on that. And then we have the Children's Art Festival. Family Day is the annual Richmond Children's Art Festival. On Monday, February 21st, from noon to 4 p.m., families can enjoy a range of free offerings and self-guided opportunities at the Richmond Cultural Center. These include interactive performances, drawing and painting activities, a public arts scavenger hunt, and a virtual live stream concert. So again, if you want to get more information, this time you'll go to www.childrensartfestival.ca. That's children's, plural, childrensartsfestival.ca. And finally, we have a Race Bullying Day. On Wednesday, February 23rd, it's Pink Shirt Day and an opportunity to demonstrate your support against all forms of bullying, racism, and discrimination by proudly wearing pink. Also called a Race Bullying Day, a number of activities will take place in libraries, schools, and community centers right across Richmond. City staff, Richmond Fire Rescue personnel, and council will proudly wear pink that day to raise awareness and stand up against bullying of all kinds. To find out more about that, please visit our website once again, and remember to wear pink on February 23rd. So with that, bylaws for adoption. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. There are 5 bylaws for final adoption with no noted opposition.
Any discussion on that? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. And Development Permit Panel.
Thank you, Your Worship. There are 2 recommendations for Council. Recommendation 1, that the Chair's report for the Development Permit Panel meeting held on May 13th, 2020 be received for information. And Recommendation 2, that the recommendations of the panel to authorize the issuance of a development permit for the properties at 3208 Carscallon Road and 3200 Number 3 Road be endorsed and the permits so issued.
Moved and seconded. Councillor Day.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Brody. I did have a question. The bottom line on page 654 says inaccessible green roofs are provided on phase 3 and phase 4 buildings. Would there be any way to make those accessible given the lack of green space in that area? Page 654, very bottom line.
Through your worship to Councillor Day. So the proposed rooftop areas are proposed to be inaccessible. The development overall is providing close to 35,000 square feet of shared outdoor amenity space between the 2 phases, in addition to the construction of a new capsing park immediately to the south of this project. So the green roofs that are proposed at this point in time to be just inaccessible.
Okay. Just thought it would be nice if it was. Okay, thank you. I was just wondering.
We'll call the question then on the motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Someone move adjournment. Thank you. We're now adjourned.